Good day, everyone. Siegel would like to welcome you to today's presentation, a closer look at financial well-being for higher education institutions. Before we get started, I'm going to run through a couple of housekeeping items regarding the Zoom technology we'll be using today. First up is Q&A. We'll be taking questions in written form. You may ask us a written question by accessing the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen. There's a box into which you may type your question. Click Send when you're done. We suggest you submit your questions as soon as you think of them so you don't forget, and we'll address them at the end of the presentation. I'll answer one of your questions right now. How do I receive a copy of today's presentation? Well, within a few days, we'll send an email to all who registered for today's session that contains a replay of this webinar. That way, you may view it again and share it with any of your colleagues who may not have been able to join us today. And with that, I'll turn things over to Kelly Jones, Senior Vice President and Higher Education Practice Leader. Welcome, Kelly.
Thank you, Jared, and welcome everybody. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are. We are happy that you've been able to join us today on what we believe is an exceedingly important topic, and one that maybe doesn't get quite as much attention as it should. I'm joined today by some of my great colleagues who are experts in this area. Bennett Hadley, one of our financial security solution leaders, Rick Reed, who's actively involved in our defined contribution practice, and Megan Yost, who is one of our super communications consultants. And some of you have had the pleasure to work with all three of these folks, but if not, you'll love to hear what they have to say today, and hopefully you'll take away some kernels of information that you could share with your campuses and that will be very beneficial to you. So with that, I will turn it over to you, Bennett. Thanks.
Thank you, Kelly. And hi, everyone. I just want to take a moment to echo what Kelly said, that we're very pleased that you've taken time out of your busy schedules to be here with us today for a discussion of a topic that at this point has been really established as a major pain point for your faculty and staff and Americans in general. So I'm going to start our discussion today by grounding ourselves in the state of Americans' financial well-being and why it's important to you. Then Rick will talk about the traditional well-being tools and resources available through retirement providers. And Megan and I will conclude by discussing the actions you can take as benefits leaders at your institutions to better address your people's financial needs by designing and driving engagement in comprehensive benefit offerings. Next slide. So let's first lay the groundwork. Why have we been seeing financial well-being stories in the news so much? And why has Congress been passing legislation aimed at bolstering the financial well-being of Americans, most notably in Secure 2.0? I suspect that we all have a pretty good idea already, but the long and short of it is that people are struggling. Half of Americans feel financially worse off than they did last year. Millions more Americans are living paycheck to paycheck in 2023 than in 2022. Almost half of people feel they don't have enough savings to handle an emergency expense, and the national rent to income ratio reached 30% for the first time in history. And I remember back to when I was apartment hunting for the first time after college, and the advice I constantly heard was, make sure you're spending less than 30% of your paycheck on rent. Anything more and you're stretching yourself too thin. And that was only 6 years ago. Today, the nationwide average is 30%. So the cost of housing has skyrocketed. The price of food, transportation, goods, and entertainment have all gone up. And it's weighing on your people's wallets, and it's weighing on their minds. 68% of people are stressed about their finances. And as has been studied, this financial stress negatively impacts people's mental health, it impacts their physical health, and it lowers their quality of life, and it isolates them. You can go to the next slide, Jared. Of course, your faculty and staff are human beings who bring their emotions with them to work. So they bring that financial stress and anxiety with them to campus, into the classroom. It impacts your faculty and staff, your students, and costs your institution culturally and in real dollars, particularly in terms of turnover, as financially stressed workers are twice as likely to be looking for a new job. In the past, One of the main arguments against offering financial wellness benefits was that personal finances should be personal. Institutions and individuals, for the most part, agree that financial support should stop at a paycheck and a pension. Since that time, the clear divide between personal and professional has blurred, and Americans no longer have any reservations about asking their employer for financial help. In fact, nearly 7 in 10 people feel their company has a responsibility to make sure they are financially secure and well. For now, financial well-being is still an emerging benefit. However, the genie isn't going back in the bottle, and Americans' expectations for financial support beyond just a salary and retirement contribution is only going to continue to grow. Now, beyond avoiding the negative effects of financial stress and meeting the rising expectations of your faculty and staff, financial well-being benefits can be a natural extension of your diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. Black and Hispanic families have a fraction of the wealth of white families, and the gender pay gap hasn't moved meaningfully in the last 20 years, just 2% from 80 to 82. Disadvantaged groups are far more likely to be financially stressed and living paycheck to paycheck. And one of the myriad reasons for the racial and gender wealth gap is that disadvantaged groups have been stuck living paycheck to paycheck and unable to participate in the financial institutions that have built wealth for others. Financial well-being benefits are designed to support struggling households and empower people to budget effectively, save for emergencies, pay off burdens of debt, care for their family, and save for all of life's financial milestones. These benefits really are an opportunity for institutions to care for their most vulnerable people and increase the equity of their total compensation. Now, finally, and possibly most obviously, financial well-being matters to you because you care about your people, right? I've already enumerated many of the ways people are struggling right now, and because of your institution, you employ a variety of people on the socioeconomic spectrum. You probably have some people who are doing financially quite well, but I'm certain you have a population of people who are struggling. There are likely some people you assume are doing well, but are actually having a difficult time, since 51%, a majority of Americans making more than $100,000 a year, are still living paycheck to paycheck. Financial well-being benefits are an opportunity to express your deep caring, enrich your faculty and staff's lives, and really cement your institution as an employer of choice. All right, now that I've made the why of financial well-being clear, I'll hand it over to Rick to discuss what financial well-being services are typically available to faculty and staff.
Thank you, Bennett. As you said, I'm going to echo, survey data has shown that employees are relying more heavily on their employers to help them with their financial savings. And this goes well beyond the workplace savings programs like 401k plans and 403b plans. As you also mentioned, the recent retirement legislation of Secure 2.0 introduced optional provisions that employers can utilize to help their employees save for their financial well-being, such as emergency savings and paying down student debt. These type of provisions are unprecedented. Historically, most of legislation has been focused just on retirement savings, and we're seeing the issue of people, as you said, living paycheck to paycheck. So as you can imagine, many of the record keepers are offering education and sometimes advice regarding various financial wellness topics, such as pre-retirement savings, college savings, budgeting, debt management, to help fill this gap. And what you're seeing here on this slide is indicating the percentage of record keepers that are offering these type of topics. But you also have to remember, it has to be pointed out that while defined contribution record keepers are helping with financial well-being, that's not their primary focus. Their primary focus is to help participants save for retirement. But it sure is that it is in everybody's interest, including the record keepers, to help participants get their financial affairs in order and understand the basics necessary to achieve the short-term and medium-term goals before they can turn to saving for their long-term goals, like retirement. So participants, they're really struggling to save for retirement because they're trying to meet their everyday obligations and live paycheck to paycheck. So the record keepers are offering such topics as you see here. It runs the gamut from free retirement savings, which includes some building emergency savings, helping with just investment basics. Many participants do have the wherewithal to say, I want to put some aside, but when it comes to the choice of investments, people start to get a bit paralyzed. So they are offering solutions in that regard as well. And we also know that the nation has a tremendous amount of student debt. So all of these type of topics are worth talking about with your record keeper. They have some great tools. And as you'll see on the right side of this slide, your participants can call into the service center and talk with a representative. They can attend various webinars that the record keepers make available. They offer various online self-service tools and many proprietary products to help fill this gap. I'd also point out that there are, while we're talking about these providers, there's also been a surge in niche players or niche providers who have specialized offerings that may be more tailored to fit your institution or your level of employees to help attract and retain that talent. So, again, the traditional level of services is they are making these services available, but in some cases they may not go deep enough but we'll also see, if we go to the next slide, some of the other things how these traditional services may be falling short. As I mentioned, there are the online services and tools and resources, and that's where many of the record keepers are driving participants. They want participants to go do it themselves. And that's okay if people understand and people are engaged to do it. However, the challenges that we have seen and continue to see is there continues to be poor engagement. There continues to be situations where some of those tools and resources may have additional fees that may apply for some services that your participants are responsible for over and above the plan and record keeping charges. And then lastly, there's also the general state of confusion. In some institutions have more than one record keeper. So a particular participant may not know where to go or who to speak with. But in general, there are services out there, but there are other avenues. So with that, I'm going to turn it over back to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Rick. Now that we have a better understanding of the widespread services available, that Rick just talked about, we can familiarize ourselves with the aspects of a modern financial well-being program beyond what's available through retirement providers, right? But before I move on to education, providing services and point solutions, I want to really highlight one of the points Rick was just making, that record keeper services or retirement provider services are focused on saving for retirement, right? But as we know, retirement is often not the financial goal people are most concerned with, especially people under the age of 45 and women, who are much more likely to be financially prioritizing their family than their own retirement. Financial well-being builds up from the foundational pillars of covering daily, weekly, and monthly expenses and breaking the cycle of living paycheck to paycheck. When people can comfortably pay their bills and not have to worry about what happens if their refrigerator or their car breaks down, really only then are they going to be able to focus on saving for the down payment on a house, saving for a wedding, a child's education, and then eventually retire. Right, so there are all these competing financial obligations in everyone's lives that they really need to address before they can really think far out in the future about retirement. So right, onto the second section on the slide, education. Right, these are the live webinars, live seminars, webinars, articles, videos, and modules that faculty and staff have access to, and where they learn the important principles of personal finance, about everything from their retirement plan investment fund selection to the financial challenges of caregiving. And as Rick alluded to, you're likely getting some of this from a retirement provider, but many organizations choose to take additional steps to provide their people with educational materials. Some educate faculty and staff about a particular topic through a communications campaign with a communication specialist. Some contract vendors to provide ongoing education, and some have internal education initiatives. For example, many organizations participate in America Saves Week, which is an annual program with daily themes that serves as a call to action for individuals to create better financial habits. Now, advisory services, which is third on the slide there, is really the logical extension of education. Both advisory services and education aim to provide knowledge to faculty and staff. However, education requires people to learn and retain information themselves, while advisory services makes professionals available who can impart the financial information individuals would have otherwise had to learn and apply on their own. Now, these services are made available through a variety of channels, including AI engines, call centers, virtual coaching, and in-person coaching. But they are most effective when faculty and staff are matched with a single coach who has the flexibility to meet the timely needs of an individual. All right, this offers a level of continuity and trust that's really only possible in this kind of one-on-one arrangement. And finally, the fourth type of financial well-being service, point solutions. Point solutions are your opportunity to address specific challenges your faculty and staff face. Now, over the last number of years, many general financial well-being providers you've likely heard about have risen in popularity, but there's also been an explosion of providers focused on a specific financial need. And then they cover many different types of needs. I'll list some of them here. The list is pretty exhaustive. Emergency savings, student loan assistance, student loan repayment, tuition reimbursement, liquidity assistance, debt management, credit score management, lifestyle accounts, caregiver assistance, home buying assistance, rental assistance, medical bill management, employee discount programs, and even more. So these are the four types of financial well-being services that really characterize all the resources that are out there. It's important to keep in mind that fundamentally, financial well-being benefits are about empowering individuals to make smarter financial choices. Record keeper services and point solutions give individuals the tools they need to take action, while education and advisory services arm them with the knowledge they need to take the correct action. Remember that an effective offering provides both tools and knowledge. Offering just one won't result in the enduring positive outcomes you and your people are striving for. Next slide, please. Okay, now that we've talked about the four types of financial well-being services that make up a modern benefit offering, let's talk about how to stitch those elements together to create a comprehensive offering that addresses your goals, faculty and staff's needs, and doesn't bust your budget. The first step is always to define your goals. What should this offering accomplish? How should it support your faculty and staff? How should it integrate with your broader DE&I, culture, and total compensation initiatives? Goals are really how we make our ultimate objectives tangible and measurable. They'll be our first guiding light throughout the creation and execution of a well-being offering. Now, our other guiding light will be your faculty and staff's needs, right? You know your people, so you probably have some idea of the financial challenges they are facing. That's a great starting point, but it also pays to be rigorous and take a deep dive into your data to get a complete picture. Now to make the benefits of a data analysis more tangible, I'll give you an example. So we're currently going through this process with a large national organization. And when our contact approached us last year, he had some preconceived notions about the financial well-being services that his people really needed most. However, he also agreed that taking a closer look into the data was also prudent. Now, our analysis in the end, not only confirmed that their people had a need for the services he assumed, but it also uncovered a previously unidentified need for caregiving support. It further showed a nationwide struggle to retain mid-career talent. Since one of the organization's primary goals was to improve retention, a benefit that targeted mid-career employees who face caregiving pressure both from young children and aging parents became really a core piece of the organization's offering, and a core piece that would have been missing if we hadn't taken the time to be thorough and rigorous in our approach. Next, your offering strategic plan is where you marry your goals and your people's needs. This is where your benefits offering takes shape. What financial well-being elements should be included? Does your faculty and staff have any really specific pain points that aren't addressed by your retirement provider, financial education, or advisory services, like the caregiving assistance in our example? Having a stated strategy is important to ensure that your offering can be flexible and respond to change without having to go back to the drawing board. Now, with your strategic plan in place, it's time to execute on your strategy. This is where you'll engage with service providers to find the best fits for your offering. The financial well-being marketplace is nascent and constantly evolving. Although there may be several providers that seem to offer the same services, there are always nuances that may work toward or against your goals. Since faculty and staff buy-in and trust are essential to success, being too hasty in selecting a service provider can condemn an offering from the outset if you pick one that works subtly against your goals that may not be obvious at first glance. Now, engagement is not to be overlooked. We can spend all the time and all the money in the world on the greatest well-being offering in history, but it won't be successful if faculty and staff don't know about it or don't understand how using it will benefit them. This is really a critical topic that Megan will do justice to in just a minute. Now, finally, measuring results closes the loop, and when done correctly, ensures continuing success. Right? One of the purposes of creating goals from the outset was to measure them. And this is how you determine the efficacy of your offering and identify any barriers to success. Is the offering accomplishing what you set out to accomplish? If it's not, you can follow the process back around. And if the cause of the issues isn't obvious, right, you can jump back into your data to identify the obstacle you're facing. Then your strategic plan will inform how the obstacle should be overcome. You execute changes to the offering and measure again to make sure that the issue has been addressed. In this way, your offering can continually improve and not only support your faculty and staff in the present, but also into the future as well. Okay, as promised, I'll stop talking. I'll turn it over to Megan to go really in depth on how to drive successful engagement in your financial well-being offerings.
Thanks, Bennett. So I just want to touch upon a comment Bennett made about having a strategic plan. That's really important, not just to have a plan for what you offer in terms of the benefits and resources that you make available to faculty and staff, but also that you have a roadmap of what you highlight and promote to your participants throughout the year. So when you think about your programming, that calendar of events, when there may be webinars, how you want to focus attention on different topics or different resources throughout the year. So having a strategic plan for communications more specifically is really important to driving awareness and increasing participation. And when you think about bringing attention to either existing benefits or promoting and launching a new benefit or a new resource, having a framework that allows you to think about the types of communication vehicles that you send and the messaging within those materials at different points can be really helpful. So this is a framework that I've used with tons of clients over the years, including higher ed institutions. And it's kind of helpful to think through what you're doing at what time within a campaign. So at first, you want to build awareness. So this is when you announce a new resource, for example, and or you bring attention to an existing resource in a more concerted way through a campaign. In the second phase of the campaign, you communicate value. So this is where you dive deeper into what a resource or a service is and how a faculty or staff member may be able to take advantage of it. And then driving engagement is really about helping people take that next step. So whatever you're asking them to do, whether it's to sign up to meet with a financial coach, to log on to a wellness platform, or to take some other action, that's where you're trying to call attention to and have that next action taken. So I'm going to share some best practices in the following slide for driving positive outcomes. And there are 3 things to really pay attention to. One that's often overlooked, and it's really like one of the most critical and key pieces to communications, is the what's in it for me being the faculty or staff member, needs to be really clear. So what is this solution? What can it do for someone? How can they use it? How can it ease their stress? How can it ease kind of their worry about their finances and how they can take advantage of this resource? So you want to make that really clear first and foremost in all of your communications that highlight this program or resource that you're promoting. The second is you want to make it convenient and accessible. So people will go, they might want to look for more information. That should be in a place that they can access easily, that's mobile friendly. They can look at it while they're traveling to and from work, while they're stopping to eat lunch, or whenever they have that moment in their day to pause, if they have a moment to look at it. And so if it's hard to get to and it requires a password right from the get-go, they probably will stop before they even learn anymore. You may need to have a password eventually to do the financial wellness checkup or to do something down the road, but at least having some information that's barrier free where they can learn more is important. And then lastly is making the information about the financial benefit easy to understand. This is really simple. It's easy for me to say. It's not as easy for people to do in practice. There's so many instances where jargon infiltrates communications, language that people use to talk about a solution, or the way that sometimes colleagues or all of us in the industry talk about financial wellness generally is not the way that humans talk about their finances and think about their personal finances. So, they don't really think of themselves on a financial wellness journey. They think about how can they make ends meet? How can they afford to send someone to college? How can they pay a bill? So you want to use language that's familiar to them. And if you have a large population of non-English speakers in your university or college, you want to make sure that you have information available or you have presentations presented in language that they understand, and also is culturally competent in terms of thinking about and talking about finances in a way that resonates with that demographic that might be different from your general population. On the next slide, we'll talk about a couple more best practices. One is frequent and ongoing promotion. So some academics from the University of Colorado at Boulder have done research into financial literacy. And what they found is that just-in-time frequent communications are much more effective in building financial capability and literacy than one mega session where you tell everyone everything and then you don't talk about it or communicate about it for several years. Just like anything that you hear and do and learn in your life, if you don't hear about it frequently, you kind of forget about it over time. And that would be and is the same case for retirement and financial benefits. So you need to remind people regularly about what you offer and what the benefit is to them. And so that's part of having that master plan in terms of thinking about when you want to focus people's attention on certain topics or certain benefits throughout the year. Another best practice is to have support endorsements from stakeholders. This is really important, especially in colleges and universities and these settings where there's lots of sometimes groups that are maybe more decentralized across the institution. You want to make sure you're getting buy-in from different councils, maybe different affinity groups. If you have those within your institution, you want to make sure that you're getting buy-in if you're introducing a new resource, for example, and that you're also getting feedback on how you might be able to position this positively to your faculty and staff members. Coordinating rollout will help you drive adoption. So if you think kind of intentionally and strategically about the implementation of a new financial wellness resource, or maybe the re-education of an existing resource, doing that in a kind of holistic, intentional way in terms of when you're talking about this, which messages you're highlighting, and how that will cascade across the various communications that you send to faculty and staff about benefits is important. Branding is really important, especially with financial decisions. A lot of research has indicated that decisions about finances require a lot of trust. And so many cases, your faculty and staff members trust you, and they trust you over a lot of other third-party entities. And so if it has your logo, it looks and feels like you, they'll be more likely to try it out, test it, see if the tool or whatever the resource is may be something that they think might be useful to them. And then finally, peer testimonials. These are always important. People trust word of mouth, especially people they know they work with, or that they feel are people like them. So, we know from retirement, especially in different projects we've done with higher ed institutions, that, when you tell when you bring in a recent retiree and you have them talk about their experiences preparing for retirement, it goes a long way in helping active employees think about whether or not, those choices might be something that they'll face, and helps them plan ahead. We also see this a lot in organizations where more senior employees may talk to younger participants and kind of impart or take them under their wing. And when they can talk about, it was helpful for me to do this at this stage of my career, and this benefit really helped me, they're more likely to listen to that advice and to take action. So I will stop there. There are many more best practices, and I can go on forever, but I will turn it back over to Kelly now.
Thanks, Megan. So when we sent out the invitations, there was an opportunity for you to ask questions there, in addition to the opportunity to put them in the chat. And so we received quite a few questions. And while we have some time left here, we're going to try to answer some of those for you with our panel of experts. And for those people whose questions we don't get to, we have your information so we can respond back to you. So you can be assured that we will answer your questions, whether they're live on this particular webinar or separately to you directly. The first question that came up that we saw was, what is a simple way to start practicing financial well-being where it doesn't feel overwhelming? How do you sell financial well-being or make it a priority when compensation and benefits take up so much space?
All right. It sounds like there might be two questions in there, Kelly.
Yeah, there are. I see it. Yep.
Yeah,
Sorry
I think
about
I'll start. No problem. I think the first one was what's a simple way to start practicing financial well-being, right? So it's not overwhelming.
Correct.
Is the question.
Yes.
Right. I assume this is from the perspective of the institution or the employer, not from an individual, right? So
I believe so. Sure.
Yeah, I'd start with the resources you have available today, right? You don't need to jump right into the whole big process. You can really take stock of what you have available today and figure out how to get more out of those programs. Really, focus on those short-term, low-cost, low-investment levers you have available to you. And then once you've done that, you've kind of maybe stop the bleeding or put a stopgap into whatever issue you're having at the moment. You can really take a step back and take a longer-term view and really think more holistically and of what you can do for your people in the longer term.
Actually, if I could add to that, Bennett, I agree. I mean, while the traditional approach from the record keepers may not fill the entire need, I can assure you they have some sort of reporting that they can provide you showing who's tapping into what services, who's tapping into what resources, how frequent they're utilizing the website on certain topics. So that's a good place to start, is with your DC record keeper. And maybe that's a good place to as your foundation, and then you can build from there where you might need some niche services.
And I would just add a third thought to this, is that it's helpful to create a roadmap and to look at the information you have currently available in terms of your data, to think about like, what are the greatest needs and how can you tackle them, and then build your list of things to prioritize from that perspective, because you have a lot of benefits that you want to promote. You may have existing benefits that you want to promote, but you can't do everything at once, and neither can your participants. So when you communicate to your participants, you don't want to send them a laundry list of everything that you offer. You want to be focused in terms of what you're trying to get them to do. And just like we know from retirement, where the longer the list of options, the more likely it is that your participants will have paralysis analysis. You want to make sure that you're just kind of thinking of one thing that they can do now, and maybe that's in connection with something that's top of mind at the institution at the moment, or something that inflation is top of mind for many people. And so if you have ways, discounts or things like that, you can kind of connect that message together.
Excellent. So now I'll go back to the combined question that I sort of stumbled over and asked the actual second question, which is, how do you sell financial well-being or make it a priority when compensation and benefits take up so much space? And before I turn to the panel, I might say that financial well-being is really part of the benefits program that is taking up so much space. So just highlighting it, and as we've talked about, communicating how folks can learn more about how to manage these things is one way to do that, to sell it to them as a way for them to prepare. But I'll let my experts address this.
You stole the words out of my mouth, Kelly. Absolutely. It's, financial well-being is a benefit. It's part of your compensation benefits package. And if you're talking about how to sell it to decision, maybe higher ups in your organization, decision makers, right, you really have to make it clear that this is a need for your people, right? And the first step is to doing that is really understanding where your people are in their financial journey, what challenges they're facing, right? And if you can communicate that to the decision makers and make it really clear that this is an issue that they're having that we can address, beyond just paying them more money, because if you could pay them more money, you would, right? Financial well-being is really a way to invest in your people at a lower cost and have outsized positive impacts, right? Significant positive long-term impacts if you can do it successfully and create those better financial habits.
If I may, I'd also add, what I've seen in this space is, and the survey data has shown, is participants are kind of looking to their employer, because if they don't have their employer offering these type of benefits, they have to go find it themselves. And that is a much bigger universe that's much more scary. So, just like you may have, they rely on the fiduciaries of the retirement plan, that there's good oversight. And this is similar, they're thinking that if my institution is offering these type of financial well-being services, some due diligence has been done. So you're narrowing the field and making the choice a little easier for them, and it can build good relationships between employee and employer.
I'm going to jump in on this one too, Kelly, if that's okay.
Yeah, I was going to tee it up for you. So
okay, thanks. So one thing I would add is that in terms of selling internally, you probably also want to look at what your peers are doing in terms of the other universities or colleges that may be attracting your faculty and staff. And I know one of my university clients is in constant conversation with the other institutions in their league, like in terms of sports league. So they're, the similar institutions that attract similar demographic from faculty. And so they meet on a regular basis, they talk to each other. And I think if one of them offered, for example, this institution offered a financial wellness platform and coach, it's probably likely that the others know about it or will want to do it too, to keep and retain talent or attract and retain talent. So I think you want to think about that in terms of positioning it to decision makers and other people within the university or college to make sure that, you are doing what you can to be an employer of choice if that's a goal of your organization.
Here's one that actually dovetails right into what you just said, Megan, and that is, how can you ensure, let's say communicating these things is one way you sell financial well-being programs, but how can you ensure that you're reaching everyone in a communications campaign?
Yes, you have to identify your audiences and where they're located. So where are people throughout the day? Do they have access to computers? If they don't, how are you going to get that information in front of them? And that needs to be part of that strategic planning that I referenced earlier. So knowing where people are, who they are, and if there are any kind of unique circumstances or needs or items that you have to address. So usually we think about having multi-channel to reach people in various settings and locations, and also different communication preferences and learning styles, and anchoring all of that to a digital first strategy. So there's always a home base to go to, and that is online, where there's the wealth of information, but then you're peppering them with a variety of other mediums so that they can maybe get the information in a way that works best for them. Another university client that I work with, they do town hall meetings at lots of intervals throughout like the day at different times, and they do them in the evening for certain faculty and staff members that can't make it during the day. So they're conscientious of like time, and then they record one of those and they post it online for people to consume later, if that works best for them. And so that's one of the benefits of technology, is that you can have things in real time, but you can also have recordings. You can take the real time discussion and Q&A and turn that into an FAQ. And so you can create different vehicles that help people navigate information in the way that they prefer.
Awesome. All right, let's see. Another question here. There are so many financial well-being vendors out there. How do you know which one to pick?
Yes, that's a great question. And I think it really underscores one of the reasons, why we've been talking about financial well-being, and why we're still talking about financial well-being, is that it's complicated. I mean, even when you know exactly what kind of service you want to offer your people, just finding the right vendor partner is extremely difficult, right? And it really comes down to making sure you understand what you're trying to solve for, right? And understanding the nuances between different vendor services, like I was talking about earlier in the presentation, right? As long as you've been disciplined in your approach of coming up with your strategy, you've defined your goals, you've collected, analyzed your relevant data available to you, you've created your strategic plan, you should have a really good grasp on exactly what you're looking for, right? And then once you know exactly what you're looking for, you have to know the players that are out there, which is evolving and changing, and it's difficult to get a grasp on. So it really takes, right, going through that disciplined process, but then also going through some similar research on the vendor side, probably doing an RFI, definitely doing an RFI or RFP to really drill down on what the small differences are between the different vendors and what will work best for exactly what you're looking for.
And I suspect that we could probably help with that, couldn't we, Bennett, in designing those kinds of things?
We could, Kelly. That's an excellent point.
And we have done it for institutions. We've gone through the exercise.
Absolutely.
I would add to what Bennett's saying is that having kind of a process and specific criteria that you're using to vet whether a vendor is appropriate or not can be helpful in the sense in that, as alluded to in this presentation, there are all kinds of solutions that have emerged over the last 5 to 10 years. And we have seen a lot of our clients say like, oh, I have a friend who works for such and such type of company. And if you have a process and a framework that helps you say, oh, that actually might be, that fits within our criteria, or this is our criteria and it doesn't fit into that at the moment, but it sounds like a great idea. Thanks for letting me know, kind of helps you balance some of those requests that you may get. And I suspect that there may be some economics professors that have a very strong interest or maybe partnered with some of these providers. And so that might help you kind of justify your decision one way or the other to go with one provider or another.
It's an excellent point. Excellent point.
One last thing, again, being the retirement person that I am, again, the due diligence that you may and the oversight you're doing on the retirement side, some of that could be leveraged for financial wellness as well. Because if you're offering things to your employees, you want to make sure that they are the right fit.
Absolutely. So I have this little thing that I've been trying to do internally and externally is whenever we schedule webinars or meetings and they're slotted for an hour, we try to give people, some time back because everybody could use, we're going from one meeting to the next seemingly always, and that can be frustrating and make your day more stressful than it needs to be. So we will respond to the questions that have come up. I promise you that, as I said before. Thank you for joining us today. Hopefully we shed some light on sort of the big picture around how to manage a financial well-being strategy. And you see our contact information there, or certainly if you're currently working with a Siegel consultant, you can always reach out to them as well. But our information is here. We'd love to engage in further conversations around this, and hope you have a wonderful rest of your day today. And thanks for joining us.